Shivaji Nagar Gaddi, that one. And students call it the Blue Door piece, the Blue Door Ila Ananya piece. That's what they call it. The other essay that they are particularly moved by is your Barbara Naidu prize-winning essay, Living Online. I take them, one of my personal favorites is about the terrace of your building that you wrote in one of your, I think, second semester creative writing portfolios. So I think the people who are listening to you right now have known you through these bits and pieces of your portfolios that you've written across 3 years. And I think it would be astonishing and in part amazing for them to see what came on the other side of all those portfolio pieces that they read. Ila Ananya then went ahead and worked with the Lady's Finger and then dumped all of us and then went abroad to do gender studies at SOAS. She is now a PhD scholar at Fitzwilliam College, Cambridge University, where she's doing a paper on social anthropology. She's also a poet, a writer. She is also an illustrator, an amazing sketch artist. I've seen some of her work. You will see it on her blog and I think on some of our post-it notes in the department. We'll have Ila Ananya's work on it. Shireen Vrinda is a jam master type person whose other essay, which I often take to classes, is the essay she wrote. It's a profile of her grandfather who studied in St. Joseph's in the 1940s. And it's a very stunning feature about what Joseph's was like in those days. I thought it would be interesting to put Shireen and Ila together on this panel because they each have a very strong and individual sense of, they each have style. It's like a very sakat style when it comes to noticing things that only they notice. And they each have a very, very solid voice. And it comes in the form of an image often in their essay, which just sort of bites the reader and then just goes back and sits very quietly. So what we want to do here is to listen to both you women. Shireen will, after she finishes fangirling, she has some questions she wants to ask you, and then it'll just be a back and forth. And then we'll keep it open for the listeners to ask questions. Sounds okay?
But I don't think I'll stop fangirling.
Thank you, Ila, for making the time for being here.
No, this is amazing.
Shireen works, she studies MA English in Bangalore University now, and there's a strike going on. And she's made it all the way from Bangalore University to Shantinagar, where she's sitting in Anush's house, who's a volunteer because he has good internet connection. So thank you, Shireen, for making the time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Quietly go and act as if I don't exist. And I'll stand here and fangirl over both of you. Okay, bye.
Bye, ma'am. So I just wanted to add to that introduction that contrary to Ila Ananya's open dosa bio, she actually hates crocodiles and is indifferent to butterflies.
I think that bio came from Vijay ma'am actually, without my permission. But anyway.
Did it come from you, ma'am? I think she's disappeared now. Anyway, I have so many questions for you because you're so many things and I don't know which one to focus on currently. But in a lot of your writing that I've not so shamelessly stalked, you talk about how you think you write too much about yourself. And I think I also felt like that because initially I was like, who really cares about what I think and what I went through, but what I did? But why should I write about myself? And why are we so undeserved about writing about ourselves?
I mean, I think for me, a lot of it came from just, one sense of it is of course just like the audience, right? That you're a bit like someone is going to read these very kind of intimate or sort of detailed thoughts that you have that might not necessarily be thoughts that you have been open to sharing to other people or sharing with other people so far. And then you're also just like when you write about yourself, you're automatically writing a lot about also just other people around you who have sort of intimately linked to your sense of self. But I think for me, like the reason that I occasionally feel quite, I think the feeling has kind of disappeared slowly, but occasionally feel slightly unreserved is because of that. But also I think that more and like, then at some point I basically wrote a bunch of personal essays that were like written anonymously. And I realized at some point that anonymity didn't take away from the discomfort that I was feeling with putting out these stories anyway. And I think then that had to do a bit with sort of negotiating the fact that writing about yourself requires some kind of, I don't know, like honesty, or also just like a confrontation of yourself and of like parts of your life that you might not necessarily have been open to thinking about and open to talking about. And that might have been difficult. And it's also like parts of yourself, like when you were younger, you might just be a bit like, I was such an idiot and I don't know why. Like, like I don't like the self that I was then. And I don't really want to put that self out there right now. So I suppose that's where the feelings for me at least come from.
I also read that you wrote somewhere that you always keep coming back to ethnographies, and we spoke before, and we were talking about how writing about yourselves makes you more open to not just ethnography but anthropology as well. As one thing, what do you like to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I came to like I realize now that actually a lot of the stuff that we did in literature class and in creative writing class when we were in college at Joseph's, there was a lot of anthropology in there without necessarily me realizing that it was anthropology, and I realized that much later. But I think that, I mean, like anthropology, like at least for me, is the reason that I turned to it was because I was interested in that, like so interested in narrative and in like storytelling. And I also wanted to, in many ways, sort of be changed by the people that I was interacting with, which I do think that which you are, like in any interaction. But find ways to write about that change and what that change feels like, both by writing about myself and writing about other people's lives and what those lives are like. And so I mean, I think that that way anthropology and ethnography is very much about this sense of like how this so-called other is kind of filtered through your own sort of experiences that might or might not be similar to those of the people that you're writing about, but you often spend so long with your interlocutors that at some point you're also a bit like, we're friends now, and then it becomes, and then the writing becomes also sort of navigating that relationship, right? And that's a relationship that you very much want to preserve and mean something to you. So yeah, I don't know, I'm rambling a bit now, but
No,
I don't know if that was your question, but yeah.
I think it fit perfectly, whatever the question was. But I'm so glad you mentioned grappling with these relationships, because your research focuses a lot about how students find their sense of self or selves, whatever that is. And that's often so connected with the friendships we have at the time and the intimacy that surrounds that, which isn't given that much seriousness. But how do we navigate? This is a very selfish question. I want to know more than anybody else. But how do you navigate complicated friendships, which are usually undeserving, or people think they're undeserving of the attention that they actually need?
I don't know if what does a complicated friendship mean to you?
I don't know, where maybe like you think you're really good friends, but they don't think you're really good friends, and
Hmm.
so many things like that. Like intimacies within that friendships don't really have a, a quid pro quo type thing, but you expect something, and I don't know. These things happen and they become complicated, and what do we do about them?
Hmm. Mm. Yeah, I mean, well, I don't, I don't really have answers to those questions, but I think that, I mean, something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and this has been like, and it's been something that I've been thinking about because I've kind of moved and like I'm in this different country and I'm making friends with people who are also kind of from very different backgrounds from me, very different from me, and I've been thinking a lot about how I'm a very different person here from the person that I am at home. And so then what does that mean for how we think about what those relationships are really like? And I think that, like, for me, a sense of a complicated friendship comes more from feeling a bit like I'm a different person in different friendships, and being okay with feeling that, as opposed to necessarily the relationship feeling in itself a relationship that has kind of aspects to it uh, that are feelings that you feel guilty for having, whether it's like jealousy or a frustration of a certain kind. Um, but I think it's also, I mean, I think of like friendships like, I mean, the friendship like the one that you were talking about, where you think you're friends, but the other person doesn't necessarily think that. I've been thinking about that a lot too, actually, lately. And I think I think the thing that I've been like, it's been for me a thing of trying to think about what I want from that friendship and what I want from that relationship. I mean, what do I look for when I'm looking for something in these relationships? And I think like trying to understand that has helped me then try to understand uh, or make sense of this feeling of not knowing whether I'm friends with someone, and feeling upset that I'm not friends with someone, or they don't think of me in the same way that I think of them. So yeah, questions of kind of how vulnerable you are with someone, how quickly you become vulnerable with someone or not. Um, yeah, those come up a lot. I don't.
In
Yeah.
all of your short stories, you write so amazingly about this vulnerability without even saying it. Like when I read them, I didn't even know it was about vulnerability until I finished. I mean, I got to the end of the sentence or paragraph, and I was like, wait, I mean, I've been feeling this, but you found the vocabulary to say it, and I was so curious about how your short stories come to be. Is there a conscious structuring that happens when you write them, and what is it like interacting with all of these forms? Did you, because you write poetry and you were a reporter for a really long time, and what is it like to separate yourself from all of these forms, and do you do that? Is that a thing?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, that's a really fun. That's a good question, actually. Um, but okay, the first question in terms of sort of the story, like the storytelling bit of it, like the writing of the short stories, I think I think I start stories with thinking about like what like there's a particular sort of moment that I'm trying to explore, or a particular feeling that I'm trying to explore, or a particular relationship that I'm trying to explore. And it's usually sort of, then I make up things, and I found that I feel like I'm a lot more honest when about my feelings when I'm making up like the situation, than I am in real
I
life.
love that so much.
I mean, no, but it's like I feel like when you, because it allows, like making up that situation allows you to then think about all these other, like the other ways in which that situation could have played out, and then you think about what you would have felt in these kind of these different kinds of situations, or in these different, if someone had said something differently in a particular interaction, would your relationship have fundamentally changed? And I think that there are some relationships for me, that would have fundamentally changed the nature of those relationships. And so I think that I mean that's how I think about my stories. But in terms of the writing itself of it, I think I've become more and more quite like I think about structure a lot more than I used to. Earlier, I used to just kind of write. um, but I now think a little bit more about like I make mind maps. That's my favorite thing to do. And I don't know if this is a like a thing that I've got from actually doing academic writing, that now I kind of moved it to fiction, because I didn't do that earlier. But it really helps me to make mind maps, to make a structure, to think in each paragraph what is it exactly that I expect that paragraph to do in relation to this larger feeling that I'm trying to explore. And then so essentially break it down and then kind of assemble it together. Which is again not to say that you don't abandon the structure when it's not working, and pick up something else and not be open to that change, which I feel like I try to be. But that's how the short stories happen. In terms of the forms of writing, I think that the thing is that I really like all of these forms. I really like poetry. I really like academic writing. I enjoy reading it and I enjoy writing it. I enjoy reading ethnographies. I enjoy writing fiction. And I think these different forms give me different things. And I think they allow me to explore different relationships with myself and with other people and my place in the world. In particular ways. So I relate to my fiction in different ways, obviously from my ethnographic anthropology, but what I do in my research raises questions for me that I might also come back to thinking about in fiction, potentially. There are some questions like that I've been thinking about that I'd like to explore, but that is yeah.
Thank you so much for that. With everything I've read that you've written so far, I feel like you write until your stomach is empty. And I found myself wondering, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but have you ever withheld from giving yourself fully to a story because perhaps you saw the makings of another story, of another poem in what you were writing? And if you did, what was that like?
No, I really like that question. Actually, it made me I feel like I've stopped to think about. As in, I've noticed myself do it when I write, but I haven't necessarily paid enough attention to what that feeling is. But I suppose it would mean to me that I would. It depends on what's distracting me. Like, is it a side character who's distracting me, or is it a feeling that's distracting me, and sort of also how big or sort of pressing do those distractions feel, and then see whether then the story because I feel like following the path of some distractions might also mean that it is a different story, and you also want your I don't want to go down every rabbit hole and necessarily take my reader down every sort of random rabbit hole. So I do think that there are some things that work in a story and that don't, and that it's better to keep for another one. But I think I make those choices depending on how pressing that detour potentially feels.
I just wanted to know, how do you know that something is not really necessary in a story, that it's not working? Because I feel like sometimes you get too much inside your own head and you don't know what's what and what to keep and what to get rid of. And how do you do that? Basically, I just want to sit and watch you while you're writing, but that would be very creepy. So I'm asking you these questions.
I think it's more I feel like I find it actually easier to do when I'm writing a poem than when I'm writing fiction. Because I feel like when I'm writing a poem, and this is because I have a very I don't know if I have a relationship with poetry. It's new to me, and I'm navigating it. But I think with a poem, I feel a lot more like I need to be in control of the image or of the the direction that that poem is going. And so I'm much more brutal with what I cut out, and I cut out things much more easily than I do with fiction. And I mean, with fiction, then I try to think of it in terms of, sorry, it was like a 10. With fiction, then I think I try to think of it more in terms of like, what is, again, like what is that sort of like larger feeling that I was trying to make sense of? And does sort of going into this sort of tangent allow for that feeling to kind of make sense, or not? Or is it just like, is it making sense for me, and then would it make sense for a reader? But yeah.
Thank you so much for answering all my slightly indulgent questions. And I'm most excited about this part because Vijeta ma'am, when we were in our first year, brought the piece that won the Barbara Naidu Prize that you wrote to class. And I remember after we'd read it out loud and we read it once in our head, there was like harmony of ours around class, and everyone was just like, so I don't even know how to describe it. And I'm so excited that now I get to listen to you read. And so could you please read something that you've written for us?
Yeah. No, wait 1 second. Let me pull it up. This is a bit of a, so I was going to say that this is it's a poem that I've been working on for some months now. But it's still like work in progress, in that it's a draft, and it will likely change. But anyway, it's tentatively called Double Vision. Okay, Double Vision. Last November, I stood at the market with my hot dry noodles, watching myself eating my hot dry noodles, left foot forward, chopsticks and fumbling fingers, hair flying frantically, face cracked into a smile, asking Sita, "How are you today, my love?" And because I was two bodies and many minds, I could eat my noodles, say to Sita, "No way, he didn't seriously do that," lift my hand to my face, laugh with my head falling backwards, notice myself eating my noodles, watching myself eating my noodles, and think with some curiosity, I wonder who I see. I wonder who I'm seeing. Later, I looked across to myself again when Sita, walking between us, slipped her arms into mine, our chins retreating into coat tops, boots clicking, fingers clenched in pockets, discussing shampoos. I smiled until I noticed I was not smiling. I felt her warmth. I wondered if I felt her warmth. I had chili on 2 tongues and 4 cracked lips. And so I started to watch myself and watch myself watching myself, and thought, I suppose this is a bit like participant observation. Sometimes, perched on a windowsill, a wall, I'd look down from above, notice again my thinning hair, hear myself ask Lindsay, what exactly do you mean by spatially dispersed phenomena? And Matthias, do you think there's something distinctive about studying theology that lends itself to existential crises? Here I'd raise my hand to my forehead, think, now my fingers have grazed my forehead, drop my hand to my thigh, think, now my palm has touched my thigh, before I realized briefly and with some surprise, I asked them questions and didn't say sorry. And so I'd blink twice because I'd want to smile, think, I'm blinking twice because I want to smile, think, I'm watching myself blink twice because I want to smile. Then I'd look up to the glare of the heating lamp, find my eyes instead, dry skin peeling on left eyelid, catching myself watching myself, a small animal in a spotlight. I'd rummage for Vaseline, hear Alejandro say something about science's imagined rationality, text Eric, yeah, we're still at the Eagle, glance up to see that I'm still looking. But participant observation is only participant observation when you act with generous curiosity. In methods class, Kandya says we must always ask, what are we participating in? With what aspects of ourselves and with what limits? I am in this life with 2 bodies, watching myself, my wonder aloof and clinical. So today when I sip coffee and talk to you about anthropological engagements with the self as though I know what it means to have a self, what I really mean is, sometimes I want to give Allah a hug when she arrives and a kiss when she leaves, without thinking, Look, now I'm hugging Ila. Now I'm kissing her cheek.
Thank you so much for that. That was amazing.
Thank you
All
for
things
listening.
and nice.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for everything. And if there are any questions at this point, I think we'll take them.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So today there's a small screw up in that we didn't check if there's a license for this. Usually it does. So it'll end in 4 minutes, but people will rejoin again. Okay. So what we'll do is, Drishti, can we end it now and then rejoin now only so that there is no clumsy break later?
My second.
We can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you. No, ma'am, I'm just speaking to Richard. He said he's doing it right now, so I don't want to end it because
We
I'm
don't have to
hoping.
end it now.
No, I don't think we'll have to end it. He said he's switching on his
Fine.
system.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. I think we can continue. The questions will come, but meanwhile, we can take questions, as in you can continue your questions with Ila while we wait for the questions from the audience.
Okay, I will. I'm very curious about what it's like to be and to write and to study about this manufacturing of various selves while you bring your whatever self you have to it and with whatever wholeness or partness, and I'm curious to know what you think about that.
No, it's a weird feeling. I mean, I've been like, I don't know, because I think so a lot of my research has been in university spaces most of the time, and I think that there's something about university spaces that I've been very interested in, perhaps because of sort of what they've made me think about when even now, like as a student. But there is a sense of kind of like encounter with people in a way that is I don't know, that's much more pronounced to me, and that I've been trying to kind of make sense of what changes that brings. But I do think that at the same time, I mean, I come with myself to this research with like sort of like bits of myself, but also I think the fundamental nature of anthropological research is also to be changed by the any research really, to be changed by the people that you're interacting with, and have like different sort of these different worlds kind of collide a bit, and then see what happens from there. And I'm like, I get quite anxious, but it helps to kind of think like I want to really be open to that collision and see what that does to me, and then to the work that I produce. But yeah.
Thank you so much. We have a question by Vijeta ma'am. She said, can Miss Ila tell us about her ordinary day at Cambridge and where she walks and what she eats and whether she has time to read fiction, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, I eat a lot. So this year actually in particular, I've made friends who take food as seriously as I do. So I kind of eat everything, and I have friends who love to cook, and so they cook, and I kind of cut, wash vessels. But I eat a lot. Like I eat. There's this one restaurant that I go to every fortnight, which is called Noodles Plus, which has basically like I eat a lot of dumplings there, and I eat a lot of like pork noodles there, and egg custard buns. So that's my fortnightly with Sita of the spoon. I do walk a lot. I walk everywhere. So the thing about Cambridge is everyone else is like a bit like cycling all the time, but I tend to walk. There are parts of it that has like a river that I really like to walk around. I live close to a botanical garden, so I go there sometimes. So yeah, I don't know, but a normal day is mostly like I just go to the library and then I work. I'm reading more fiction now this year actually than I did last year, I think I finally figured out a bit of a routine. So that's happening.
Sorry to interrupt. I think we might have to join again. So if it ends, please join again. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll see you again.
Seat.
I'm in. Simran asked a question, but I'm afraid it went away with the last meeting. Could you please ask your question again, Simran?
So
So she says, what do you do when a city starts feeling lonely, but it has nothing to do with the people around you?
Good question. Yeah, I don't know. I try to like I've been trying. I feel that quite often. But I think what I'm then like I've been trying to do is essentially like reestablish some kind of relationship with the town or with the city. But like sort of go for walks or sorry.
Okay, so the group which is
I go on. I basically do things that make me feel a bit more in tune both with myself and with the city. So I like physical things. So I like to go on walks. I sort of. I mean, I think sometimes I just do push myself to be in situations where I am with people and with others and then sort of feel better through that. But there are some, I mean, but having said that, there are also some cities that just like it doesn't click. Some cities it does, and some cities it doesn't. And that, yeah, it's a matter of dealing with that loneliness through, escaping somewhere else, or whether that's through, and somewhere else can be through books or movies or whatever it is. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I don't really have an answer to it, I guess. But
I would like to know what it feels like to write in a city. And I mean, you've written in so many different cities, and are they different from writing from the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think I tend to write in the same places. Like when I write fiction or when I write poetry, I'm always writing from home. As in like my room, basically, wherever that room is. Like I don't think I've ever been able to write fiction or poetry anywhere else. I can, but I do think that when I'm in different cities, I think of, like I've written some stories that are set in the UK. That are also quite, I mean, that had to do with actually me trying to make sense of that city a little bit. The other way that I do return to hope that I don't feel lonely in a city is actually to write my way through bits of that city. Like whatever it might be like, it doesn't have to be anything also. It can just be like a paragraph or something about a place or,
Thank you for that. Vijayata ma'am has another question. She says, how often does the memoirist in you yawn/roar enjoy on lonely PhD days, if you have those?
I don't think I don't think that I've written a personal. I don't remember the last time I wrote a personal essay. and I don't know if that's what you mean by memoirist, but I don't remember the last time I did that. I think that like all my writing is now either academic or kind of fiction and poetry. And I feel a bit like that's been a slightly conscious movement away from that, because I felt a bit like I think that was the only form that I was writing in when I was in college, and I think a little bit like I'm running away from it, and I don't really know why. But yeah, but I certainly do think that I would like to kind of write more creatively, a lot more than I do right now. As in, I mean, when I say creative, I mean academic writing can be creative, but I mean like, fiction and poetry. But yeah.
Sita has a couple of questions. Does writing bring together these different selves, these double visions into a type of coherence for you, or do they remain separated? Also, could you talk a bit about how poetry as a form could help capture this type of fragmentation / double vision, more than short stories, for example?
I think writing does not, I mean, I used to feel a sense of coherence when I wrote, and that came from the fact that at some point in my life, that was this was all I want, all I ever wanted. I mean, it still is all I ever want to do is write. And it was the writing that gave me some sense of coherence from sort of also just like a large part of my childhood that I was trying to make sense of, and didn't know how to make sense of. I think though that that's less now, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because I've just I'm feeling a lot more sort of crisis and existential related when it comes to questions about the self, and that's why the writing is not helping anymore. But I think I am looking for coherence, and I'm not sure that I should be looking for it, and that's the right way to go, and maybe I should be sort of more open to that. I mean, to this lack of coherence, really. And about poetry as a form, I do think, I think it like this particular poem, I there was I think I was really conscious of how I was structuring it in a way that I haven't done before. I yesterday I'd kind of I was talking to a friend from home, and I'd sent it to her, and she was a bit like, I've never, you've never written this way before, and what's going on? Not in a bad way, but just you've never written like this before. And she was right that I was a lot more kind of conscious, I think, of line breaks, of where things were breaking, of punctuation. And I think that being able to think about that helped me think about the self as much more fragmented also, and show what that felt like, or the repetitiveness felt like. I mean, at least I'm hoping that that's what's coming through. I don't know if it did, but that's what was going on in my head. But yeah.
Thank you for that. I don't think we have any more questions. Would you like to read us another poem of yours? No? Okay.
I'm not prepared. Sorry. And this was really I was just in a state of panic trying to decide what to read, and then but yeah, no, but none of the time for sure.
I'm so glad you decided to read that poem. I'm also very curious to know what fruits you eat in Cambridge.
What fruits I eat?
Fruits I eat. This is partly Vijayata ma'am's fault, because she's ingrained in all of us to be real to fruits, to feel fruits. So I'm curious to know what fruits you eat, how you eat them.
I'm not very adventurous when it comes to fruits. I also this is actually the first time in my life, the last couple of months, the first time in my life that I've ever eaten fruits voluntarily. Otherwise I needed someone to kind of give it to me. I eat apples, and I eat grapes, and I eat oranges, if that helps.
does. Thank you. I don't see any more questions. So I think thank you so much for coming here, Ananya, and I can't wait
Thank
for
you
the
for
day you
having me.
come to Meta.
No, I'm looking forward. So I'm going to be in Bangalore for like a little more than a year, starting in July. So I'm looking for the next Meta. I will be there in person for sure.
I'm really looking forward to seeing you next Meta. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you for reading.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for speaking with me and for your questions and for listening to me read.
I'd love to listen to you read more, and I'm hoping we can do that live next year.
Oh my God. But anyway.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Tomorrow is the last day of Meta, everybody. So the validity will happen, and before that, Jam finals will take place. So I hope to see all of y'all there. And thank you so much for such a lovely evening. Thank you, Ananya. I hope you have a good day / afternoon / whatever time it is there.
Have a good night.
Okay.